Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Augie. Coming in for my third video right now. I guess the first video doesn't really count because I'm just making a weird noise. But today I want to talk about the influences for EverQuest Next. I want to talk about both the game influences and the influences from things before games. The first of which being J.R. Tolkien. He sort of invented fantasy for our generation. He created the world of magic and goblins and adventure in that sense. And the first people who took that and turned it into a game was Dungeons and Dragons. And so I can't really start this video without saying those two names, putting out J.R. Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons, because I'd be a fool not to. They're huge influences that really started fantasy for us. The real reason I do want to talk about influences is because everybody's looking for something new in the genre. They're sick of lots of different things. They're sick of the combat system. They're sick of... some people don't even know what they're sick of. They're just like, we want something new. David Georgeson said it best at the Sony convention 2 weeks ago. He said, enough is enough. And we want something new. We as gamers and as people, we're like, it just seems like the same thing over and over again. We're sick of grinding on mobs. We're sick of quest grinding. We're sick of grinding, period. And so we want everything to be new. And I'm hoping that what I do with this video is sort of show the revolution that's happening with EverQuest Next and how it is going to be that game that changes everything. A lot of people say, well, you can't change everything because you can't. People will be like, well, we missed this. And the truth is, when I was reading an article by, it was a question submitted to the Wise Druid on EQ Hammer. Oh, no, there's a fly. To EQ Hammer, the Wise Druid, and it was somebody saying, I miss EverQuest 1, and when I saw EverQuest Next revealed, it was like a gut punch. And I can't quote exactly what they said. I know they said something about getting punched in the gut. And the Wise Druid replied, well, you're not getting gut punched by Sony. You're gut punching yourself, because you were looking at that old feeling of EverQuest and wanting that nostalgic feeling, and what you got is not that. You didn't get nostalgia. You got something brand new. And when you let nostalgia affect what you want, when you say, well, I miss the days when such and such was, it's never going back. You're not going to be able to go in EverQuest Next. They're not going to have you sit down and meditate at your spell book and to get your mana back. You're not going to be able to have your spell bar and everything the way it was, because it's not that way anymore. There's more convenient ways to do it. And honestly, I mean, I was playing EverQuest earlier today, and I was like, some of these things kind of annoy me now. I'm like, why can't I just press P and open up my spellbook and drag something to my action bar? I have to first scribe it into my spellbook, and then I have to memorize it onto my spell bar. And it's silly, because we trick ourselves into having that nostalgia and wanting the same things because it was so good at the time, when really we're advancing, we're moving on. Anyway, so going back to the influences that inspired this game, J.R. Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons. The next one I want to talk about is Magic the Gathering. And the reason I want to talk about Magic the Gathering is not it. A lot of people are like, I'm sure that when I said that, you're like, well, I see the only connection is fantasy and fiction. But what I'm drawing from it is new cards. Every time something comes to Magic the Gathering, it changes the way the game is played permanently. Somebody pulls out a new card that just came out in a new deck, and you don't know how to deal with it, and it like kills something that you weren't expecting to get killed. You're like, what did I do? You don't know how to deal with it. And so I like that idea, because the game's always going to be dynamic, changing in that way. There's going to be new classes added to the game constantly, and whenever somebody uses a new ability, you're like, whoa, what was that? It adds that sense of mystery and change, and that's really what everything's about now, is change. They don't want the same thing. So that's what I'm drawing on from Magic the Gathering. The next one I want to talk about is Terra, and Terra in particular is kind of a I feel like it was sort of a fall through of a game. I think it's a great game in some ways. I think that they had a great idea with the true action combat system, but that's almost the only thing I can say from that game that I really liked. And they're taking that true action combat system and putting it into EverQuest Next, and that's why I have to call out Terra for saying great job on getting that action combat system and applying it. I know that one of the other games is Neverwinter that took that true action combat system and implemented it. Next one I want to talk about is Guild Wars 2. I don't have a graphic for this one because I forgot to grab one, and it's because I didn't even think about it the first time. But Guild Wars 2 movement system is sort of being brought in. You're going to be sliding down mountains. You're going to be jumping from place to place. You're going to be finding ways to get from where you need to go to where you need to go. Part of that being from the voxels. You're going to be able to block people from going specific places or block monsters from getting to you by actually moving terrain. And so I'm excited to see the movement systems from Guild Wars 2 implemented. Even though Guild Wars is one of the first things to start it, EverQuest Next is going further. And so I'm excited to see that. The next one I want to talk about is Rift. And because the reason I want to talk about Rift is because of the dynamic changing world. When Rift came out, they kept talking about the dynamic changes. And for those of you who don't know what dynamic means, it means different. It's things that are going to be causing the world to always not be the same. And when I played the game, I was like, yeah, I can totally see how everything's constantly changing. There's rift invasions constantly. Like, whenever a zone's under a rift invasion, everything's chaos. There's these giant patrols of monsters moving through the zone, and if you get caught by them, you have to deal with them. And so I like that idea, but when I look at what EverQuest Next is doing with dynamic change, they're not just saying, okay, we're going to have these mobs moving in and spawning at these locations. They're throwing monsters into the world and saying, go out there and do whatever. And the other big change is rallying cries or rallying calls, excuse me. The rallying calls are huge dynamic quests that can take up to 3 months, is what they said on video at the Sony convention 2 weeks ago. They said it could take up to 2 weeks to complete this quest, and it's a quest that everybody in the world can participate in, and it'll permanently change the world. It's kind of like a patch that's ongoing, like you are doing this quest and you're creating the game as you go. So one of the quests may be, okay, there's a new, or you need to go settle this area because there's like this resource there that you need to gather. So you go there and it starts out in this small tent encampment, and then people are like, well, we do need some city walls because we're being attacked by these goblins. And so then part of the quest is, okay, you're going to go help build the city wall, or maybe you have to go help and fight off the goblins while people are building the city wall. But you're going to be constantly involved in doing that. And at the end of that quest, there might be a giant entire city capital or a nation created in that area. Or maybe you've exterminated the goblins in that area and the Goblin King has retreated and fallen back into underground caves several miles north, and may it set up for another rallying call later in the game. Maybe you'll have to chop down an entire forest in order to supply that town, and that forest won't even be there anymore. It'll just be this, maybe just a full giant plain of nothing. And maybe the goblins are still there and they're angry, and so from that point on there's always goblins trying to settle that area, trying to attack the city because you took away their home. But I'm excited to see that permanent change and the idea that you can be involved in it. and the world isn't just changing, it's you changing it. And so I'm glad they took that from Rift and made it more real. In fact, it's going to be so real that you are the change. And nothing's a better feeling than feeling that you are changing the world. So that's really exciting for me. Calling out on World of Warcraft just a little bit, because they're the leading MMO in the genre right now. They have the highest population of players, and they've sort of led it for a long time. A lot of people say World of Warcraft's gotten worse. I talked about this a bit in my introductory video, but I just feel like you can't not look at World of Warcraft for some of the aspects of the game. When you're in the MMO genre, it's just part of the genre. Lastly, League of Legends, and the reason I want to talk about League of Legends is because of the play style of the player. Wow, that was like totally obvious. But the play style being the action bars. There's only going to be 8 total actions that you can be using at a single time in EverQuest Next. And the reason I like this is because it sort of simplifies it. It makes you set yourself up for specific situations. One day you might wake up and decide, okay, today I'm going to go out and dig for this mineral, and I'm going to need some explosive abilities in order to start digging and mining for these materials. So you're going to go and equip those abilities from specific classes that you've collected. And in League of Legends, it's like you're setting up for a specific role so that you can do a specific thing. As a support role, you're going to have things that cater to that support, or cater to your AD carry, or cater to what your needs are. And so I like the idea of just having those few actions and being able to change them for specific situations and making yourself more independent in that way. Those are like the only influences that I really could. I mean, there's lots of other influences, and I won't necessarily draw from them all because they're combinations of these influences, but I wanted to bring up these ones just as sort of a base head. And if you guys have any others that you want to throw out there for me to talk about later, or if you want to talk about it, throw it in the comments. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm really excited to see where this channel goes, see what happens with the with EverQuest Next, and I'll catch you guys next time. My next video will be coming out tomorrow evening, and I'm not sure exactly what it'll be on yet. It might be on EverQuest lore. That's something that I've really been digging into. And but yeah, thank you for watching, and have a good evening or a good day wherever you are in the world.